Shalawam, Shalawam, Israel. A couple months ago, I did a lesson. Basically, it was titled "Who Wrote the Bible." So the reason why I wrote SALACKIA. So the reason why I did that lesson a couple months ago, because oftentimes we'd be on the highways and byways pushing the word, or other brothers in other camps would be on the highways and byways pushing the word, and people would come and say, "Who wrote the Bible?" Esau wrote the Bible, or the Bible was changed and stuff like that. So what happened was I got so fed up of it that I did a video, a scholarly video by the way, to actually prove who wrote the Bible. So what I want to do is kind of go over that lesson with scholarship, but because I've got more information available here and more books available here to concretely or to emphatically prove that not so much who wrote the Bible, because we all know that it was men inspired by Yahweh in the spirit of the Ruach HaKodesh. We know that, but so that's not what's in dispute, or that's not what I'm tackling today. What I'm tackling today is the aspect that they throw at us, which is, i.e., King James wrote the Bible, which he didn't authorize it, or King James is a white man, so his Bible, or the Bible he authorized, was somehow not correct because, according to them, he was white. So I'm going to get into that. But first off, I'm going to, as usual, going to read some Paleo Hebrew. So here we go. Malak, Yaiqab, Bani Yasharahla, Shakawa, La'a, Aishawa, or Aishashawa. Because we say Aishashawa, but actually when you read the Paleo Hebrew Bible, you read how it's spelled. It's actually Aishawa, but we say Aishashawa, right? So what that means in English is Malak Yaiqab, or Malak Jacob, or actually King James. Let me put this so you can see it. King James, because James is English for Yaiqab. So it's actually King Yaiqab, right? So what it says is King Yaiqab, or King Jacob, or King James, son of Israel, is dark skinned or black skinned. I don't like the word dark. Is dark skinned and not, so La'a means not, and not Aishawa, because we don't like to use the word white because technically they're not white, but they are wasted away, meaning that as a result of them having no melanin, their skin is translucent and you see the blood through them. So that's why the colors change, because their emotions can actually show through their skin. If they're angry, they get red. If they're upset, or if they're cold, they go turn blue, and so on and so forth. So yeah, so that's what it is in Paleo Hebrew. And then what I'd like to start off with today is using the Zondervan Compact Bible Dictionary, because I'm trying to use scholarship. So it's also written in the front cover of the King James Version Bible, but for scholarship I'm using alternate sources to validate, because out of the mouth of two or more witnesses every word is established. So I'm going to go to page 86. Hopefully this lesson is not going to be as long as the last one. I know I've got a lot of people to sleep, but it is what it is, right? So this is the Zondervan Compact Bible Dictionary, and I'm on page 86. Right, so I'm going to read it to you. King James Version. When Elizabeth died in 1603, the crown passed to James I, who had been King of Scotland for 47 years as James the Sixth. Right? Yeah, James the Sixth. Several months after he ascended the throne of England, he authorized a new translation of the Bible to replace the Bishop's Bible. So the Bishop's Bible was a Bible that was written before the King James Bible. And there's also another Bible called the Geneva Bible that was written. It's actually the first book that was printed when the printing press was created in Geneva. So that's why it's called the Geneva Bible. So those books, those Bibles were good, and they were like 75, 80% the same as the King James Bible. But the flaw in those Bibles was that the scholarly process was not utilized to create those Bibles. So that left room for schism. So what King James wanted to do is create a scholarly piece of work that would eradicate schisms, and which leads to separations of faith and doctrine. So he wanted to create an emphatic piece of work. Right. So now we're going to go into how it was done. 47 of the best Hebrew and Greek scholars of the day were divided into 6 groups. Now it's funny how it states Hebrew and Greek, because we in the truth know that the Greeks or the Gentiles were actually Hebrew Israelites that grew up as Greeks, who knew how to speak and write Greek. Often many of them also had Greekish customs as well, but they were the experts of the Greek language. So it's always better for somebody who's an expert of a language to translate, because they know the little nuances that come along with languages, where somebody that's learned a language may not be able to decipher these little nuances. So that's why when it says Greek and Hebrew, what it actually means is people that not only know the language, but know how to read and write the language. Yeah? And through the Spirit, I would say Gentile, Greek speaking Jews. That's what I would say. Of the day were divided into 6 groups: 3 for the Old Testament, 2 for the New, and 1 for the Apocrypha. So this is actually proving that the Apocrypha was part of the Bible, which we always maintain that it was. 2 of the groups met at Oxford. So we know that Oxford University is one of the top universities in the world. 2 at Cambridge University. We know that Cambridge University is another one of the top universities in the world. And 2 at Westminster. When a group had completed its task, its work was submitted to 12 men, right, which, through the Spirit, I would say would be equivalent to the 12 judges. So each tribe had a judge, meaning a patriarch or a chief of the tribe. So they would be the ultimate judge of any issue. It would always go up to him. So the 12 men would, through the Spirit, they would be equivalent to the 12 judges. Let me see, boom, boom, boom. Two from each panel. Final differences of opinion were settled at a general meeting. So a general meeting in our custom is actually what the church is. So the church is a called out assembly where everybody's called out and has to attend. Right? Of each company. In cases of special difficulty, learned men outside of the board of revisers were consulted. So what that means is that they didn't just rely on their own opinion when there was a difficult question to answer. They actually asked for other scholars outside who were respected to assist. So that further proves that it's not a biased piece of work. Um, right. The board of revisers were consulted. Marginal notes were used only to explain Hebrew and Greek words to draw attention to parallel passages, in other words, precepts. Italics were used for words not found in the original, but necessary to complete the sentence. So the reason why you may have to add words to complete a sentence, not add words, that's the wrong connotation, but utilize words to complete the sentence, because Hebrew and also Greek to a certain extent are very direct languages. So in English you would say, do not do that, or that is incorrect. In Hebrew, you just say la'ah. See what I mean? So for it to make sense in an English or another language, you would have to utilize certain words to make it make complete sense in another language. So that's basically what they did. Boom, boom, boom. Yeah, yeah. So I just used that. I just used the Zondervan because I could have used the Bible itself. I used the Zondervan because I like to use comparative analysis, meaning that I use other books of scholarly, what's the word, of a scholarly or academic level in order to validate a thing rather than rely on my own opinion or the opinion of other men that I may have a lot of respect for, but basically it's a man's opinion. So I like to rely on scholarly or academic writings in order to validate. Right. So after doing that, right, now we're going to get into the fun bit. Right. So first off, I would like to go into a book which is accredited. It's an accredited book. Right. So let me show you it. Right. Accredited. Right. Right. So this book is called The Memoirs of the Secret Services of John Mackey, Esquire, during the reigns of King William, Queen Anne, and King George I. And then also it has underneath, including also the true secret history. So this is important to know. So the author actually knew that this history was secret, meaning that it's not commonly known, of the rise, promotion, etc. of the English and Scottish nobility, officers, civil, military, naval, etc. So what I intend to do, because I'm focusing on that element that I taught in my prior lesson about King James, who authorized, who made it happen. And let's put that like that. He was the person that made it happen, made it possible for the King James Version Bible to be made, because he called the scholars together and he put out the commission, meaning like I'd like to get the top Hebrew guys, the top Greek guys to come together and make a more complete rendering using the ancient manuscripts in order to get a more complete translation. Right, so he authorized it. So because he authorized it, and because we're often challenged on the streets by people who do not actually study or do not actually do what I would call scholarly research. So they do YouTube Google search, or they will listen to somebody who has information, and then they will reuse or re-utter the information that they've gained without actually validating to ensure that it's correct information. So that's a very, very iffy thing to do, because you could actually, without knowing, you could be laying snares and stumbling blocks, because you have to ensure that the information that you bring out is as true and correct as it possibly can be. Right, so let's get to the heart of where we're going. So first off, I'm going to go into page one. So page one is not actually page one because it's an official document. There's a lot of, how to put it, like seals and and legal writings to validate its authenticity. So a lot of, in the beginning of the book and the end of the book, it has a lot of that. So page one is actually, I find it actually, nearly there. Uh, right. So page one, you see how much pages I have to go through to get to page one. So all of these are like different seals, different letters that was added to the work to give it validity and also to prove its historic authenticity. So I'll actually show you this one because this is one of them. So you can take screenshots of all the things I'm showing you. So that's That's one of the pages that validate it, but there's quite a lot of them. We can take a screenshot of that. So I'm going to read page 1 because I'm going to prove that the Stuarts, or King James and his progeny in particular, were Jacobites or were melanated people, or what we would call so-called black people, right? So on page 1 it reads, His Royal Highness Prince George, husband to Queen Anne and Lord High Admiralty of England, is brother to late King of Denmark. So this individual is actually the brother of the King of Denmark, so they're family members, and uncle to the present. So he was the brother to the king that died, and his son that's now reigning, he's obviously his uncle. Was chosen by King Charles the Second, or King Charles the Second would be the son of King James, or the grandson of King James. I think the grandson of King James. To be husband to his niece, or he could be the son as well, we'll get into that anyway. By King Charles II to be husband to his niece, Princess Anne, right? So I say all of that just to prove that King Charles II is the uncle of Princess Anne, right? So we're just establishing the family link and we're establishing the proof, right? So after that, I'm going to go into page 19 and 20, right? So, now all the books, all the pages that I'm pulling up, I'm going to show them to you, so hopefully you could screenshot them. 19, right, and 20, and 20. So hopefully you could screenshot them because it's vital information, right? Let me go to 19. John, Duke of Buckinghamshire, etc., Lord Privy Seal, was Earl of Mulgrave in the reign of King Charles II, same King Charles II again, had the Garter and made a considerable figure at court. His presumption made him, listen to this, his presumption made him make love to the Princess Anne, now Queen. Now remember, this book was written by a Secret Service agent. So he was getting information that was not necessarily known to everybody. And he was relaying that information to another royal family member, right? So these things may not be commonly known, but these things are fact because the seals and so on validate the information as being true and correct, right? So yeah, so his presumption made him make love to Princess Anne, now Queen, for which he left the kingdom, right? So I'm going to turn the page, so it was 19 and 20, right? And then in page 20, it describes him. He is of a middle stature, of a brown complexion, with a sour, lofty look, meaning he had a austere look, near 60 years old, right? So we're gonna go to page. We're gonna wait a minute. 19 and 20. All right. Page 92. So what I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna start the comparative analysis now. So there's another book that I'm using in conjunction with the first book. So I'm going to read the title of this book as well. It's called The Negro Rulers of Scotland and the British Isles, which is actually the same family members that we're speaking about here. It's written by a doctor. His name is Dr. John L. Johnson. So let me show you the book. Right? You can take a screenshot of that. Right. So on page 92, apparently it's got image that I believe is important. So let me go there. Page 92. Right. So this is the Queen. this is the Queen Anne that we was referring to. Look at the image. Can you see the image? Right? Okay. So we're building up the evidence. Right. Page 92. Right. Malak. Right. So then I'm going to jump to page 29 and 30. Right. So let me go there. Page 29 and verse 30. So I'm going to show you it. So hopefully you can take a screenshot of it. 29. Page 30. Yep. Page 29. Lawrence, Earl of Rochester, is the second son to Chancellor Hyde, Lord Clarendon, and uncle to the present Queen. Right? So now we're establishing another family member, another uncle to the Queen. Right? And then we're going to go into his description. Because what we're trying to do, we're trying to not only prove that King James was a melanated man, a brother, but also his family members, his offspring. Because if you look at me, if you see my brother, you would say, yes, it's his brother, because we're more or less the same complexion. Right? So you could even my dad, if you look at me, and if you had ever met my dad, you would say, yeah, that's his son, because he facially looks like him, he's got the same complexion. So you can oftentimes, not always though, but you can oftentimes know a person that you haven't met because of a person that you have met or a person that has been described to you, which is what we're doing now. So let me get back to it. So page 30, it reads, he is of a middle stature, well shaped, so which means he's, because you know some of the brothers, their physique is really, outstanding. When you look at them, they look imposing or they've got a very good structure. So he was one of them brothers. Middle stature, well shaped, of a brown complexion, and about 60 years old. As we always say, black doesn't crack. Right. So let me get the next page. The next page now. Um, page 36. Right. So now we're getting into the direct descendants of King James. So in other words, there will be sons, grandsons, so on. Yeah, we're getting into that. What's the page again? Page 26. So let me go there. Right. Page 36. So take the snap. Page 36. Charles Linus, Duke of Richmond, is son to King Charles II by the Duchess of Portsmouth. So before I go into it, there's something I have to mention with King Charles II. King Charles II was married, but for some reason he didn't have any children with his what we would call, using English terms, his married wife. But according to us in the truth, we know that it doesn't work like that. But according to what they've written, he didn't have any children with his married wife, but he had quite a few. I think it was 14 with other wives. Let's use our terms, with other wives, right? So what they did in this book is, or what John Mackey did in this book, not only did he list the person as being a son of, he also mentioned who the mother was, because this information was important because he had quite a few wives, right? So let's get into it. Page 36. Charles Linus, Duke of Richmond, is son to King Charles II by the Duchess of Portsmouth, right? And then they describe him as black complexion, much like King Charles. So in one page, not only is it listing out the description of his son, it's also listing out a description of King Charles II. So I've got quite a few images I'm going to present. I'm not sure if this is one. Yeah, this is one I'm going to go into. So let me go into page 87 of the other book that I'm utilizing, the Negro Rulers of Scotland and the British Isles. And let me go into page 87. So let me go there. Right. So let me show you something now. That's Prince Charles II, right? He was also nicknamed Black Boy. Take a good look at him. Can you see him? Right. Let me show you something now. Right. This is an image taken from Lichfield Cathedral. So a couple of years ago, some of the brothers went there and they took images and they validated that Prince Charles II was actually a Jake, right? So I have more than one source of information to prove, because I have brothers that literally went to the statue. I've got the image of the statue, that's two, and then I've got the image found in the book, right? So two or more witnesses, right, validating that this brother, right, you clearly see the J. And notice they knocked off his nose. So this is something they do even in the Egyptian statues. They knock off the noses because the nose more or less can validate if somebody's a Jake or not, right? So we're getting into scholarship. Alright. So after page 36, I jump to page 39. Alright, so it's gonna get interesting. Page 39. So let me show you. Take a picture. Now his name was George Fitzroy. Now anybody that studies English nobility would know that Fitzroy is a name that's generally given to a son of a reigning king who is from an illegitimate source according to contemporary understanding. So the name Fitzroy indicates that, yeah, it's a prince, but he's a lesser prince kind of way. So it's actually it's like a marker, yeah? It's like an indicating marker to prove that he's a son, just the name alone. So anyway, his name was George Fitzroy, Duke of Northumberland. So listen to this now. His son to King Charles II, so which means he's another son, but by another mother. So his mother was the Duchess of Cleveland. So the one that I read prior to that was the Duchess of Portsmouth. This one is the Duchess of Cleveland, right? And it says, listen to this, he is a man of honor, he's an honorable man, is a tall black man, like his father the king, about 40 years old. So this gives an additional piece of information. The other one says he's black, like his father. This one says he's tall and black, like his father. Which, if you look at the image, let me show you the image again. If you look at it properly, you can see that he's quite lanky, right? Even though he's sitting, if you look at him, you can see he's quite lanky. Yeah, meaning he's quite tall, right? So we're getting there. We're getting there, Israel. Right. So after that, I'm gonna jump to page 39. Yeah, page 39. Page 40. So apparently there's more on page 40. So let me show you. You can take a screenshot of this as well. Got it? Yeah, page 40. Right. So it reads, Charles, Duke of St. Albans, is son to King Charles II by Mrs. Gwynn. So you notice this is three different wives that had children for him, and none of these were the queen, by the way. None of these were the queen. So these were other wives that he had children with. So it reads, he is a gentleman every way the bon natural. So the bon natural would be it's French, so it would mean good natured, meaning he had a good personality, a good disposition. Listen to this. He is of a black complexion, not so tall as the Duke of Northumberland, yet very like King Charles, turned of 30 years old. Right? And then there's another one again. Right? So remember on the page before I read George Fitzroy, and then I went into his son to King Charles. So this one now, his name is Charles Fitzroy, and he's a grandson to King Charles II, and son to the heirs of Bennett, Earl of Arlington. So whoever that Earl of Arlington is, right, who was his father, he would have been a son of King Charles II as well, right? And then it reads, a tall black man, about 25 years old, right? So we're getting into it, right? Let's go. So after page 40, we're gonna jump to page 90, right? So I think all of the ones that I called out prior to were actually direct descendants or directly related to King James, right? But what I want to do now, I just want to slip in, while I've got your attention, I'm going to slip in some other men that were prominent in the court and prominent in Great Britain and Scotland that I think are noteworthy, right? Because not only am I proving that King James was a J, not just through the information I have on King James, but also the description, the first-hand description of his direct family members, right, with images as well. But also, you can also prove it by the members that he had in court as well, right? So I'm going to read this one here. This is the first one that I'm going to show you, page 90. Snapshot. Right. So his name is Heneage Finch, or Heneage Finch, Lord Guernsey, or Guernsey, SALACKIA, Lord Guernsey, because the ancient S's look like an F. Lord Guernsey, right, is second son of my Lord Chancellor Finch, brother to the Earl of Nottingham. So the importance of this now is that indirectly now we found out that the Earl of Nottingham, remember Robin Hood, Sheriff of Nottingham and all of them? So now we found out that the Earl of Nottingham was also a J. Now how are we going to prove that? Let's go to the bottom. The bottom it reads, he was a tall, thin, black man, right? So he was a tall, thin, black man, right? So that's the proof. So now let's go to page 90, page 126. Right? So these are prominent people. Right? So I've already established that the direct family members of King James were all described as black. But I'm also, as a sidebar, getting into prominent men in the court and in the country, right? That's what I'm doing now. So let me go. So on page 126, let me check it out. Make sure, yeah, page 126. Page 126. Take a screenshot of that. Mr. Boyle, Chancellor of the Exchequer. The Chancellor of the Exchequer, the guy that's in control of the purse strings of the nation, is brother to the Earl of Burlington and has been for many years representative for the University of Cambridge in Parliament. So not only is this listing Mr. Boyle, who is the Chancellor of the Exchequer, but it's also listing his prestige as being our representative for the University of Cambridge in Parliament. It's also giving you the information that his brother, who's the Earl of Burlington, was also a black man, right? He is of middle stature, inclining to fat, dark complexion, wears his own hair, which indicates that quite a lot of them don't wear their own hair, and turned of 30 years old, which is most probably why he's wearing his own hair, because he's pretty young, right? And then from page 126, we jump to page 127, which is the other page. That'll be that page. So take a picture. Good. 127. So Charles Hedges, Secretary of State. So Secretary of State is a very important position in the court or in the country because they're the person that tends to represent the country and goes to other country and engages in politics, engages in negotiation, and also is like a malak, meaning like a messenger. So they would be the person that's relaying messages to and from courts. So they would be well respected. They would have a very good in-depth understanding of different languages and cultures, and they would also have respect in the countries that they were traveling to, right? So they were very respected people. So let me read it. So Charles Hedges, Secretary of State, is of a good family in Wiltshire, bred a civilian, was judge advocate for trying the affair of Magdalen College in King James' reign, right? And let me go to description. Description's on the other page. Is a handsome man of a dark complexion, turned of 45 years old. Right? I mean, you can't make this up, right? And this is not me saying that. This is fact, right? So after that, 128, I jump to page 137. Right, so let me go there. 137. I mean, there's a lot more stuff in there, but I'm just picking on key personnel. Page 137. The one with the highlighted, yeah, 137. John Archibald, SALACKIA, John, Archbishop of York, yeah, is Dr. Shal. So his name would be John Shal. He was rector of St. Giles in the Fields in the reign of King James when preaching warmly against popery. So popery was basically the Pope. So popery would be like against the Pope's influence. I lost the page. Yeah, 137 would be challenging the influence of the Pope because what a lot of people don't understand about the Pope has given himself the authority that Peter had as being the rock of the church. So we know that Yahushua is the rock of the church, right? But he replaced himself, or he sits in Yahushua's seat. That's a better way to say it. So he has, in a sense, to the Catholics, the power of Yahushua to make decisions and to make judgments. So what happened was King James and people like that, they were against that. They were against, so they call that popery. So anyway, let's get back into it. He was made by King William, Archbishop of York. He was one of the greatest ornaments of the Church of England. Right, so ornament, this is Old English, so you have to break it down in common language. So ornament is something that you use to decorate or something that you use to enrich an environment. So if you've got a bland house and you put ornaments up and decoration, it illuminates your place. It makes it look fly. It makes it look nice. So that's kind of what it's saying here. But it's saying it was the greatest one, right, of the Church of England, of great piety and learning, a black man and 55 years old. I'll make it up, right? Then after that, Archbishop of York. Okay, this is an important one again. So page 143. We get to page 143. Right. It's not a bit, but right. So on the topic, it's got foreign ministers, right? 143. Mr. Matthewan, ambassador to the King of Portugal, right? So he was an ambassador. So to be an ambassador to a king that has a foreign language, you have to be conversant in that language. Because when you're sent to negotiate, or you're sent message in English to negotiate in Portuguese, you not only have to know the Portuguese, you have to know it fluently, because you could misrepresent, or you could miss the nuances that each language, separate languages have. So this person was fluent in Portuguese, in the Portuguese language, as well as being fluent in English and Latin and French, because they were the languages of course, and maybe even German as well. But anyway, let me go there. He is a man of intrigue, but very muddy in his conceptions. So muddy in your conceptions would be that the way that you interpret things could be interpreted as being either biased or being slanted, right? Be that as it may, and not quickly understood in anything, right? So in other words, like when you're out there pushing the word, and you might be asked a question by a Jake who might be a Christian or Muslim or whatever, and then when they're asking you a question and you're trying to answer, they change the question while you're answering it, or they ask another question, and you can never get a definitive from them. You can never get an emphatic yes or no or a definitive statement from them. So this is kind of what they're saying about this brother, right? In his complexion and manners, much of a Spaniard, a tall black man. So this is also proving that the Spanish people, the indigenous Spanish people, which we already know, were dark in complexion as well, right? And he was 50 years old, right? So then from there, we're going to jump to 151, page 151. So let me get that one. We're nearly finished in this aspect. Right, 151, we got it. Right, right, right. So his name is Mr. Stanhope, Envoy Extraordinary to the States General of the United Provinces. Right. So I'm not quite sure if this is, but through the Spirit, I believe that he was the envoy to the United States of America. But bearing in mind, America gained their independence from Britain in 1776. So if this time frame was prior to 1776, then that would mean that he actually was the man that was responsible for going to America and making sure that the taxes were paid and making sure that order was kept and rare. So that would be a very important job as well. But listen to this, right? The father is now old and the son, a handsome black man, turned of 30 years of age, right? So with this, you can't really gather if his father was a Jake or not, right? Because the father could have very well married a Jake. So we can't gather that, but we do know that the son was a Jake. Well, he could have been a black tin Edomite as well, but we know that his color was like a Jake's color. Let's put it like that, right? Because he may not have been a Jake. Right, so this is an important one now, so let me get to this one. Because this is setting up what actually led to the eradication and the removal of this information from the general knowledge. Right, so let me get to it and then I'll break it down. So this is, please take a picture of this one. If you don't take of none, take of this one. Right, so basically, I may have to read the whole thing. Right, after King William by an army had endeavoured with great expense to reduce the highlands of Scotland, meaning to reduce the remnants of the Jakes and the original Hibernians, right, which we know Ibar means Hebrew, or the Hibernians would be the Hebrews, right, that were residing in the highlands. So the ones in the lowlands, over time they got rid of them, because even the Romans were trying to eradicate them. But in the highlands, a lot of the true Hebrew Israelites remained there. So what King William did, at great expense by the way, he he financed an army and endeavored with great expense, a lot of money, to reduce the highlands of Scotland in vain, meaning you couldn't deal with it. This gentleman undertook it singly, yeah, like I said, the S's and the F's look the same, singly with £10,000 and effected it in such a manner as to get thanks from King James for saving his people. So what happened was there was a gentleman that using his own finance, he helped King James people, because what a lot of people forget is that King James was actually from Scotland, and he was the King James the fifth of Scotland. Let me make sure I'm correct. SALACKIA, the sixth of Scotland, and the first of England. So he was actually the first Scottish king to unify the thrones, to be the king of Scotland and England, right? Where he was the king of Scotland, right? As to get thanks from King James for saving his people whom he could not succor, he was rewarded by King William for his service. Listen to this now. He knows neither honor nor religion, right? So which means he's not an honorable person. He blows wherever the wind blows, right? And he's not religious either, right? But where they are mixed with interest, and then they serve as a special pretenses. So basically, he's like a shrewd businessman, and he gauges the turn of events, and then he flows with the direction that the events are going. He plays the same game with the Williamites. Listen to this, as he did with the Jacobites, right? So you have to break that down, because what is a Williamite? A Williamite is a son of William. But also a Williamite would be somebody who follows the tenets or the religion or the belief as William did, right? So in that same context, it also says, as with the Jacobites, so the Jacobites is the sons of Jacob, and we are the sons of Jacob, meaning Bani Shal Yaiqab, or Bani Shal Yasharahla, because his name was changed to Israel, right? So we are the sons of Jacob, right? So, so that's really why I wanted to emphasize this, because it's showing you that you had two forces that were competing, right? And those two forces eventually led to the Williamites becoming the dominant force. And when they became the dominant force, they used extreme measures to remove all evidence of the former kings, or if not remove the evidence of the kings, remove the evidence of who they were and how they looked, right? So that's more or less what I wanted to bring out in terms of King James and who he looked like, right? So now I'm going to bring supported evidence, meaning images, to validate what I read in this book, and also some of the images that are contained in this book. And why it's important to do that is because we have been bombarded with so many false and negative images that bringing one correct images, like bringing one correct image, is not gonna correct the damage of the hundreds, if not thousands, of incorrect images that we've had. So to smash that cognitive dissonance, we need to bring supportive evidence, right? So I'm going to show you an image here, right? This is Queen Philippa, right? Also, this is Severus Septimus. So Severus Septimus was the first Roman emperor to conquer Britain, and he based in York. And take an image because it's got the writing there. And also, it was a dynasty as well. So it wasn't just him; it was also his son and his grandson that were emperors as well. Right, so that's Severus Septimus. So these are bigger images of them, right? That's Severus Septimus, right? That's one. So let me show you something now. So this is Queen Charlotte Sophia, right? So you see, take an image of it. This is in the book Color Knows No Color Lines by J.A. Rogers. So why did I took the image from there? But you could, if you go online, you'll get the image there as well. You can even get it in color. But the reason why I wanted it is because it's got the writing there to validate it. So let me read it. This is important. Listen to this. Queen Charlotte Sophia, consort of George III, wife of George III. grandmother of Queen Victoria. Queen Victoria, who's the grandmother of Queen Elizabeth. Right? From a portrait by Thomas Fry, 1719 to 1762. Right? She was a German princess. Right? German. So that means that the Germans were. Right? So that's one image. Let me show you this one. This one's so beautiful, I had to do it in color because the black and white don't do it justice. Look at this beauty, man. That's Jake, man, in the finest. Look at that. She's not beautiful? Right. Let me read it. Mary of Medina, Queen Consort. So they use the word consort. I don't like that word, right? But it is what it is. Queen Consort, wife of England, Scotland, and Ireland, as the second wife of King James II. Right? Look at this princess, man. Right? They should be proud to show these images. Right? So now we're gonna get into the real guy now, right? So let me do it step by step, right? So first off, let me show you this one. Right. Now bearing in mind, this is the guy that authorized the King James Bible, right? Now look at it properly. Now this actually is King James. Now they couldn't alter this image because these images are called etchings. So what etching is when you're printing something, you have to carve it out in reverse, and then when you put the ink and you print, you get the mirror image, which would be the correct image. So it's the etchings are near enough impossible to whitewash. So what they did usually with the etchings was destroy them, but some of them still remain, and this is one of them. So let's take a good look and look at its features, because the thing is, in the other images, you're going to recognize the features. You're going to literally see. So I'm going to show you another image now of him. It's King James, right? So this is an important image. This one's in color as well. So what makes this image important? I want you guys to actually, yeah, the writing. So you could take a look at the writing, right? Then look at the image, right? So if you look at the image, even though his age, if I show you the etching, let me show you the etching, you're going to see, especially by the eyes, you can see it's the same guy. Watch the eyes, watch it good, watch the shape of the face. Watch the forehead, watch the nose. You can see it's the same guy, right? Just this is a younger image of him. This is a more older image of him, but just look at it properly, right? Now check this. Let me show you something, right? Look here. So this image, what makes this image very valuable is because this image is actually caught in the process of iconoclasm. So they've already whitened his hand, see? They haven't gotten to this hand yet, but they've started to work on his face. But look at his ears. So if you look at his ears, the color of his ears and the color of his hand, that's the correct color. And here they've started to work on his face, and they've worked here, right? But you could see that this image is a J, and you can also see that that image is definitely this brother here, right? But there's more, right? Now in this image, you can clearly see that this brother is a J, right? And if you think, oh, that's not the same guy, let me bring the other image. Watch it good, especially the eyes, right? Even the beard. Watch the beard. That's the same guy, right? Now let me show you something, right? Yeah. Let's see. Looking for Yaiqab, because it's in reverse. Yeah, here, right? If you look at this word here, that's not James. That's Yaiqab, right? Which actually means Yaiqab, right? So his name actually wasn't even James. That's a translation of his name. His name was Yaiqab because he was a Jake, right? And and then I'm going to show you this one. So this one is an important one because it's got 3 separate images of him on one image, so you can compare and contrast. So this one is an older one, right? See, this one is older, and this one is the one that I showed you before. But the beauty about this image here, I'm going to show you. If you look at this image here, that image here, he's got the same expression. Let me put it on. They've got the same expression. Watch the eyes. Watch the expression. Right? Same expression. And the thing is, when people age, oftentimes, right? Because even me, when I look at myself, I'll show you something. When I look at myself, I'm aged, right? So sometimes, but if I do this, let me just show you something. Right? If I do this, right? That's how I used to look. That's how I used to look in my 20s, right? That's how I look now. So the same way, when you look at this image, if you understand the way that people age, you could literally look at these 2 images, yeah, and you can see it's the same person, right? So all of this information that I'm bringing out, the reason why I'm bringing it out, right? The reason why I'm bringing it out, really and truly, is not for people that are not in the truth, because people that are not in the truth, they would interpret what I'm attempting to do as being conspiracy theory or like a challenge to royalty or the royal family or whatever. No, this is not what I'm trying to do. What I'm trying to do is what everybody that's in the truth is trying to do, is to bring out the word and bring out the truth of the Bible. And part of the truth of the Bible, Hathawara, Watanak, part of the truth of it, or the one that we hold dear, which is the King James Version, is that the person that authorized it was our people. It wasn't some other people, it was our people. And through the Spirit, I'd also say that the people that through the Spirit interpreted it was our people as well. And that's why it said Hebrew and Greek scholars. Because the minute I see Hebrew and Greek, I'm thinking the Jews and the Gentiles. That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking our people that knew who they were in Jewry and the people that were dispersed. That's what I'm thinking. Right, so with that, I would face the east and give all thanks and honors to Yahweh, Ba'asham, Yahweh Shai, Waha, Waka, Kodash, Kal Halaliam, Wakalaliam, Wakabadiam, Yahweh, Alashadiam, Hamalak, Hamashiach, Yahweh Shai. Kwan Yasharahla, Muafla Babad, Abadla Babad, Muafla Goayam, Muafla Adawam.